Lately, I've been noticing a bit of a debate when it comes to game design, primarily in terms of Fallout, but also other series. There's a disagreement between what should matter when it comes to game mechanics, largely in combat. Should the skills of the character or the skills of the player that controls the character matter more? Let's talk about player versus character skills. So, there's two competing ideas when it comes to mechanics. One is that the player should be able to functionally interact with their environment as they would expect. If the player shoots at a target and said target is within their reticle, then the target should receive the appropriate amount of damage. The idea that the player's skill matters more focuses on accepting the reality that this is a game, and this game chooses not to get in the way of the player's combat progress with artificial handicaps. The other idea is that the character is what really matters, not the player. The protagonist has a journey to go through and should not be a master marksman right out the gate. Level 1 is Level 1, and is meant to show that your young vault dweller is an unskilled rookie. The player's ability to aim shouldn't matter. The idea that the character's skill matters more focuses on showing the progress of personal betterment that the character will achieve by slowly removing the handicaps as they get more skilled in the weapons that the player chooses to specialize in. In a way, it's a bit of a debate between gameplay and story. Those who prefer to design to the player often feel rather annoyed when they cannot get the reactions that they expect out of the world around them. Missing shots in Fallout 1 or 2, bullets spread in 3 or New Vegas, even missing hits in Morrowind despite being right next to their target as they're swinging the sword. These are all examples of lower skilled characters struggling to use a weapon that the player is employing. They're expecting the protagonist to be appropriately adept at using the weapons because that's what the player wants to use. To many of those who prefer the player focus, the reality is the dice roll mechanics are simply unfun. RNG strips away control from the player and applies limitations that they do not expect and likely do not want. Chances and probability are not desired, but rather a binary system of pure yes and no is what they want. To have RNG is to limit input, and limiting input in itself is a problem. They feel that the character is merely a vessel for the player to inhabit, and the character does not matter, nor should they. It's about them, not the protagonist the story is about. Meanwhile, those who prefer to design to the character see them more as the true protagonist of the story. While yes, the player may have various points where they can decide what actions the protagonist can take, the story is about the protagonist. The player likes that the character is weak and ineffectual at the beginning, but will eventually become more powerful. To these players, growth matters. They like to see the character progress and get stronger. They love to see the experience bar fill up and their skills and numbers get bigger. The journey itself is part of the charm, and they don't mind missing a few shots or hitting for far weaker damage than one would expect because these players feel like that weakness in the beginning is fun. Getting stronger and more accurate is a reward. In that regard, they want the handicaps to limit the human advantage that they would otherwise have. The human advantage that many players often have plenty of experience in games, particularly first-person shooters, that translate skills over from one title to the next. While the protagonist may never held a gun before, the player has played several games with similar basic mechanics beforehand, and may have even beaten this particular game in question several times. These players view the character's growth as the real story, and that player is merely the brains, not the actual body. In many respects, Fallout 3 and New Vegas have tried to blend both player and character skills together. While the player can aim at something, there's a small degree of offset due to a character being in lower skill. Fallout 4 went somewhat player skill. As far as aiming goes, there's no skills involved, just modifications to a gun that may affect accuracy and reduce bullet spread. Meanwhile, due to the nature of Fallout 1 and 2, character skill is really the only thing that matters. The player has little to no direct involvement in the actual combat. It's all dependent on dice rolling, though the player can manipulate accuracy due to skills and choose what target to shoot at. Ultimately, this is one of those situations where it's truly dependent on what a particular gamer wants. Do they want the game to be more about them, or do they want it to be more about the character they're playing as? Do they get more enjoyment as things are happening as they would expect, or do they prefer to progress and get stronger with time?